Well, welcome to this week's episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. If you're joining us live, hey, we appreciate you being here. Think about hitting us a like. That way we know who's out there as you're watching this. And we'd love to know who we're talking to this week. If you're watching us on the replay, hey, appreciate you being aboard. And we hope you get value out of today's episode. And it's well worth your time that you're going to invest into this. So this week, just like every week, we put together what we feel is a right idea for today for you to be looking at and thoughts for what needs to be done. So Sheryl, in mind of today's topics, what's your thought today of the topic that we're getting ready to cover in this episode?
Well, the topic is setting your stage for success in 2023. The meaning of setting means you need to do it in 22. So my thoughts are it's time for everybody to get up and start planning for 23. It'll be here before we know it.
Fantastic, because we're only talking about 6 weeks here, so it's not a lot of time before we'll be rolling into 2023. So what about you, Brandi? What's your thoughts on today's topic?
I mean, I think it's just so important that we reflect back on this past year, the years previous, and see what was working and what wasn't so that we can move forward into 2023 with much greater success.
That's dead on the money. So what we're going to be talking about is what is the things that you as a manager need to be doing right now in order to set your plans for success in 2023. So hang around. We'll be right back and we'll get rocking and rolling with today's episode. And we are back once again. So, hey, the first thing I want to do is from each of our points of view. And let me tell you something. You're looking at 3 people that have an assortment of, opinions, points of view, because that's the big thing about us. The 3 of us don't agree on everything. So be aware of this. Recently we were just looking at something for the company to do, and we had all these different opinions of what do we need to do, okay? And it was down to colors and all these other things. So you're going to get points of view that may not be in agreement as we go into this discussion. So from the point of view of what do the 3 of us see as the major challenges to companies where they're not getting their maximum potential? What's costing them money? What's costing them waste? And 2 of mine that I'm going to start off with is number 1, and you've heard this from me so many times, is so many companies simply don't have the systems in place to operate properly. That's number 1. That's where I'm coming up with this. The number 2 thing that I'm seeing is lack of training of people. And we'll go into more details on these as we enter into this discussion. But that's my 2 major things. So, Brandi, what are your major things that you're looking at?
Well, I think history can be our best predictor of the future. And so, not to be Debbie Downer, but it's all over the news that we are heading into a recession. We're not quite yet there, but we're heading into a recession. So if you were in business back in 2008, think about what those times looked like. How did you survive? Did your business go down? And we need to look at all of our historical data, ROI, KPIs, so that we can make it through 2023, not only just coasting along, but that we can excel in 2023 and survive if we are going into this recession. My other thing would be going back to KPIs. One of the things, since I work with CSRs, is I see these companies that have this amazing software that tracks how long a CSR is on the phone. Did they book a call or not? Was it a lead or not? And they're not utilizing it to its full potential, or they're not utilizing it at all, or they don't have it set up properly. And so that's great information that we can compare. I'm always comparing this October with last October and the October before, so I can kind of predict where we're headed.
Yeah. So your big answer is going to be found in the history. And the only way you're going to be able to accumulate that history is you got to track and measure what's going on. You just said a key thing. I look back at this, I look at this month last year and this month the year before. But in order to do that, you got to have the story. And you mentioned something else about 2008, 2007. And it reminds me, and it brought to mind, hey, I wrote a book back in that period, and it was called Chaos to Reinvention. And what it was, where I detailed down the things that I had gone through and that I learned from, and today use that in my coaching practice to help other people. So, Sheryl, what about yours? What do you see from your viewpoint as both a business owner, which you are with your manufacturing company, but also in the major role you feel, which is helping people recruit new people to their team?
Well, like Brandi, I agree with looking in the past, but I also think you have to look very hard at the present because we're working with people. These people that we have hired are the people that make the money to support the company. And if you have bad apples, you need to be cleaning up your bunch. And as you know, I do a lot of hiring. I think you need to be continually hiring because at the end of the year, this is the way, if you know my point of view in every book and anything I've ever written is always, I'm glad I did instead of I wish I had. Do not go into the month of January wishing you had have taken care of it in December.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, Sheryl. How many people do you feel are doing desperation hiring? Instead of finding the right person, they're jumping on someone simply because they can walk, talk, and breathe. Is desperation hiring a practice you see and it's got to be gotten out of?
It's what I have seen. I'm trying to get the clients that I work with to quit doing that, but it still falls to that thing. It's nothing upsets me more than to get the statement, get me someone that's breathing. And because then you have got a time bomb going off, whether you like it or not. So you see it, it's out there way too much. If you notice, the only time you see hiring signs is at the beginning of someone's season when they're desperate to have people. You know, the chimney service is the winter season, HVAC is the summer season, plumbing's pretty much across the board. But there are times when people get totally desperate. And every now and then you can bite that bullet, but you cannot run a business on desperation.
Yeah. So, Brandi, let me bring this over to you because I'm going to quote something about Blues Brothers, Jeremy and Brandi, that was a past history. Your process at one time was to hire in the spring months. Okay.
Mhm.
You actually had a process that in September, I would come to your location every year. I would get to spend my birthday with Jeremy and Brandi, and you knew my favorite restaurant, and we went through all the stuff associated with that. So, have you had to change that process in your own hiring
Oh,
practices?
absolutely. Years ago, it worked. I loved it. I would start looking about March. By May, I would have 3 to 6 new people. I would onboard them all at the same time, train them at the same time. You'd come in September to certify them. It was a great process. And unfortunately, the world has just changed and it just doesn't work that way anymore. So now we are always hiring. If it's the right candidate, we are always hiring. And you guys had to listen to me whine the last couple months. Yes, I can whine about not being able to find a personal assistant. And I mean, I was getting all these resumes and doing these interviews, and frankly, the candidates were just crummy and the interviews weren't going well. And I had just about resigned myself that I was just going to not have a personal assistant for a long, long time to come. But I was patient and I didn't desperation hire. And now I have an amazing personal assistant, Denise, who is just knocking it out of the park. She asked me 2 days ago, what can I do better? And I'm like, just the fact that you asked me that question is impressive. But she's come up with all these new ideas. And just before this, I was downstairs and she was color coding the calendar with meetings. And so I'm happy I waited and I didn't just hire that warm body.
Got you covered. Now, Sheryl has another concern that she feels is of adamant importance. And actually, this is an area that you are the person on our team that I feel has the best knowledge about this, and that is the onboarding process. Because I got to agree with Sheryl. As much as we have preached, and as much as we have taught, and as much as we have said about the onboarding process, do you agree that we are seeing people not following that process that's leading to failure of the people that they recruit?
I think we both do. I'm not sure where you aim that question at, but that's the biggest problem. I can get them. Okay. I can find the people in the hiring process. You can put them on, but if you can't onboard them and you can't keep them, this is a circulating door. And it's not a cheap door entry either. It costs a lot to bring a person in and get them set up and get them productive. And then at that point, if they haven't been onboarded correctly and they're able to withstand, you're losing a person.
Yeah.
So to me, get them, but keep them. That's
You know, and it was really interesting this week because I listened to a short webinar that was featuring the CEO of Jimmy Hiller's company, which is a vastly large HVAC company in the Nashville, Tennessee market. And he said that they had come to the conclusion that if a hired person left their employment, it was a $50,000 loss to the company. $50,000 from someone leaving there. And he went about through the processes of what they had done in order to do this. And one of them is they had bought a training company and had their own training, which is what we see Tommy Mello do and other people. And it's something Al Levy preaches. I preach it and other things. So, Brandi, what's your thoughts on this lack of proper onboarding leading to the massive problems we have of lack of profit, lack of sales, mistakes, waste, the list goes on?
I agree 100%. I've never had so many requests in the last couple of months to do remote CSR onboarding for companies. So when they're bringing on new CSRs, to do their remote training to onboard them. This is like a brand new thing, getting all these requests rolling in. So I think people are realizing that, but I also want to touch on the point that Sheryl talked about keeping them and going back to that large company, what it costs to lose an employee. That's a part of planning for 2023. And that's something that I just had to do within my own company is what can we do to retain our great talent? So for us this year, we were looking at the benefits we provided. Our health insurance went up 6.7%, which I understand is not actually that bad. A lot of companies were going up 10 and 11%. Over the years, we've always incrementally increased what part of the employee's premium we pay. But in looking at 2023 and wanting to retain our great employees, we know from surveying them that benefits are a huge reason why they stay, why they came to Flues Brothers. And so we decided that for 2023, we're going to cover the entire premium 100% for the employee. So that's one of the things that we had to look at so that we can be successful.
Right. So, Brandi, I'm going to come back to you in a minute because you just said something really interesting, which is, and I noticed this also, that the demand for you to do one day training remotely with CSRs, number one, it makes you very happy because, let's face it, getting on an airplane is not one of Brandi's favorite things to do. I've traveled with you. You're a terrible travel companion. You just don't like to fly. And our little loop through the Southwest this year proved it to me when we landed in the second airport, and I bid you farewell in the third one on that trip. But people are doing this. Are we seeing the results? Because I know we are, because you just completed a second day of training for a company that engaged you about a month ago to do a new hire. So this is one-on-one training you're doing with one person, Brandi?
Correct. So the first company that I had done it with, they brought in a remote CSR, even remote for them. Their CSR is not on site at their company. And I did a one-day training And then we followed it up with 4 weeks of an hour training each week, just so that I could listen to their calls and just make sure that they had retained the information we went over and they were progressing. And then they have now been able to hire another CSR. And so last week I did her onboarding, and then this morning I met with her for her 4-week weekly training. And then I have another company next week on Wednesday that I'm doing, I think, a couple of CSRs for them.
Yeah. And, the whole thing is, not only are we doing that, you're also getting on, they're enrolling in the virtual training to do other things like our Chimneys 101 course and the other courses that we can bring people in a recorded version on our virtual academy there. So Sheryl, with what Brandi's doing, do you see that this is a way to make more successful office operations?
I think anything you can do to show people the correct path is making it happen. And one of my passions is, if you want to call it that, are the DISC assessments. I think that's one way of, number one, knowing yourself, but on the other hand, of knowing other people. And I can't understand why every company wouldn't do every one of their employees and know what they're working with, because then it's a lot easier. And I think Brandi will agree. It's a lot easier to see the holes in the system that you're working with, because if the person is hearing what you're saying, or you can just read them so much better. So everything you do is important. I honestly do not think that you can just throw them in and forget that they're there.
Correct. And there's you a big kudos from one of your clients there, talking about Blair at Magic Broom and how successful she is, Brandi. So that was really great. We appreciate that. But this is one of the things that we're seeing. I think for years in the industries that we serve and in the home service contracting business, I think it's all been technician training. And now we're seeing where people are understanding, in order to have this effective office, which I've often considered, that's the center of operations. Everything works. That's a hub and spoke. It's just like an airline hub. If that hub's not running right, then those connections are going to be missed. And that's what you're working with, Brandi, in this. So in 2023, you've really stepped this up to a whole new level. So let's tell people a little bit, what is Brandi's plan for training CSRs in 2023? Because right now you're sitting in your new learning loft right now, and hopefully we're going to have some blinds before long to block the window behind you that's that bright lights coming in.
I'm working on Jeremy. He measured for me this morning for blinds. Yes. So as you mentioned, I do not love traveling. I am not a good traveler. I would prefer to, but I love teaching. Like if I could just write courses all day and teach all day, I would just be the happiest camper ever. And so for 2023, I am teaching classes here in Kansas City at the Learning Loft. CVC has partnered with the NCSG to provide the CSR Basics 101 class that we rolled out last spring at the Chimney Expo. And in addition to that, the first class I have coming up is in January, and it's specifically for office management. So anybody doing office management, that could be a technician in a manager role, a CSR in a manager role, the business owner if they're doing that office management role themselves. But I have a separate class that's coming out specifically just for business owners. And then I have one, I think the one I'm most excited about is the one that is going to be where we take a look at hostage negotiation and how that translates into communication with customer service.
Got you covered. So again, what you're looking at there, and I'm going to go over the technician side, because this, I feel, like I said, what we have here is, from our tracking, our measurement, is we have a lack of training, and it goes into the field employees also. Because here's a big thing, folks, and the market that we primarily serve is the chimney and venting industry. And I'm going to even fault myself for part of this, because for some reason, we have convinced that if you become a certified chimney sweep or a certified NFI technician, then you're a subject matter expert. And the problem is, that's simply not true. That gives you the basics. But we see people that go to that level and then they stop and they don't go any further. And to give you an example of where it hurts is every single week, almost every other day, I hear of another person who's injured on a job site. And occasionally we even hear of fatalities. So when we look at this, in fact, I did a daily training tidbit for our platform earlier today about the training courses for safety. And we also did an email blast out to all of our team leaders this week because this training is there. But what happens is somebody doesn't pay attention. They're not aware of the hazard because in the course that we did, the book that Robbie Murphy and I wrote, we covered over 60 different hazards. In fact, Brandi, you were even involved in our editing of this. And my question to you was, have we covered everything? This was a 6-month process to write this book to make sure we covered everything. And what we've also done is, if you're a client of ours, we have given you a copy of this book for everyone in your company. So you put this information, but that's a big problem. Like I said, the other day, I just had a client conversation this week, and part of it was listening to phone calls. And Brandi, you know this also, that often if you listen to the phone calls, what do you hear, Brandi, whenever you hear someone in the phone call? What's Brandi looking for?
I'm looking to hear their smile, first and foremost. I'm looking for them to use the word may instead of can. May I put you on hold, not can I put you on hold, or I'm going to put you on hold, which is more often what happens. I'm looking to make sure that they're speaking intelligently, that they're listening to the customer and not just going through their rote and not hearing what is the customer's real concern, that they're asking intelligent questions of the customer. And then I'm actually comparing the call with their CRM to make sure that what was gone over in the call is actually translated to the technician in the CRM so that we're setting them up for success.
Right. And the call I listened to this week, I considered it a discouraging call. I considered that the CSR discouraged me from doing business immediately. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. The first words out of her mouth were, well, just so you know, we can't be at your home until the 3rd week in December. Now, Sheryl, if you called a service company and they told you that right off the bat, are you ready to continue the conversation? Are you ready to say adios?
You know me, I'll throw my hands up. I'm done. I move on.
That's
There's a lot of people like that. It's hard to wait. I mean, anything you wait on always has the potential of not happening. So I like things booked immediately. I know I can't always do that, but as immediately as I can. A couple months out does not work.
Yeah, and it isn't. And you got to provide. It's just last week, I went through the most chaotic time, and Cheryl's laughing because my phone jack is not operating where I can't plug my earbuds in. And I talk on the phone all day long, and this is part of my life. And we went through such a rigmarole. I think I was between 8 and 10 hours of phone calls in last week to get this stinking phone. Brandi, why are you holding your head down?
Because I'm thinking we need to bring you into 2023 as well, coming up, and get you Bluetooth headphones so that you don't have to worry about it plugging into your phone.
He won't use them. That's the bad thing.
You see?
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole idea was, and I'm going to go ahead and put this out to the public. I offered to do this for him. So that didn't happen either.
Yeah, it didn't. So what you got to do is, Brandi, how do we track and measure to assemble this history? Because you were dead on the money. And this is what I often tell people. It's hard to remember the pain you had in August. It's hard to remember the pain of Monday. The pain you remember is the pain you're in today. So what's the secret for them to track and measure this history?
Well, I'm going to get into the metrics, but I want to touch back on what you said, the way that the CSR said that. We never want to say anything negative, because if you say that to me, then I'm thinking, well, you don't want my business. And there's a much better way that you can put it in a positive spin, okay, well, the next time we're going to be in your area. So we never want to use negative connotations with the customer. But as far as the tracking, it can be done a multitude of ways. Back in the day, before we had our current CRM, we tracked literally in an Excel spreadsheet. The CSRs went in and made a tick mark every time they scheduled a person or didn't schedule a person. And we would manually go through and figure out how many caps did we sell that year, how many chase covers did we sell that year. Now with automation, a lot of CRMs will do all of that work for you. It's just a matter of knowing how to pull that information out of it. And it's so important to look at every single itty bitty detail for not only the office, but also the field technician side.
Okay, so let's bring this into play, because often software is the history. Software, if you have the proper system. And see, this is one of the things that we look at as people look at new software. Often, they're trying to simply look for a scheduling program. They're not looking for a management level program, because the tracking and the measuring that we're talking about is a very important part of the systems for the business. But again, putting that together is not easy. And one of these superb software programs is not cheap. In fact, Brandi and Jeremy are probably two of the hardest people that there are to switch to something, because y'all look at costs pretty heavy, okay? You're the little miss negotiator out there, okay? I know how you are and those type of things like that. So what's the justification to getting the right software? Is that going to help you manage and run this business?
It's going to save you a lot of time. Remember that time is money, and it's going to make your life a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Because as I said, you can do it manually, but that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work.
Right. And that's the purpose of artificial intelligence, is to do those kinds of things. It's like in the mornings, I want to know what the weather is. I don't have to go to the television or turn it on. I just ask Alexis there in the bathroom, hey, what's the weather today? Okay.
Her name's Alexa.
Huh?
Her name's Alexa,
What
not
did I
Alexis. You said Alexis.
Okay, so see, that's part of the problem. You know, they have a special one for us that are in our age group, Randy. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
That's probably Alexis then.
But see, we actually have Echo also, so it depends on which one you're asking. One is Alexa, one is Echo. Okay, so we have two hanging out here. Okay, so Sheryl, what's your thought on having this equipment to do this tracking and measuring?
Well, I think nowadays you have to, because I remember the pen and pencil day of doing things that took forever for a bookkeeper to do anything. And it's all in the speed now, the speed and the accuracy, which is even more important than the speed. So the thing about it is, without software, you're back in the pen and pencil day, and you're wasting time.
Yeah.
That's what we pay for.
Great. So a big one to us is going to be systems. Okay. And I brought this up. I consider this one of the biggest leading factors. And if you look at it, if you talk to Al Levy, if you talk to me, we're pushing you in the systems. Well, came to a big conclusion this week, Brandi, in dealing with the client, because he looked at it that he had to have this all-encompassing system that covered everything in the company. And what he was just held up from this till I finally was able to get through that. The systems are a collection of tidbits. In other words, where we have everything, every task is detailed down. And again, the classic thing that I have said for years is, every time there's a mistake, every single time, there's three reasons. Number one, we don't have a system. Number two, the system is wrong. Or number three, somebody didn't follow the system. But we got to go deeper and figure out, why didn't they follow it? Is it because they didn't comprehend it? Or are they simply not going to listen to it and follow it, and they got to go away? So Brandi, what's your feeling on the systems?
I agree 100%. I think often what happens is people get paralyzed by the fear of making it perfect. So they don't want to roll out the system until it's 100% perfect in their mind. And in some people's mind, if you're a real type A, it may never be perfect in your mind. And so you have to start somewhere. And so it's okay to start small with one SOP and then graduate to 2 SOPs and to add to those SOPs later. They may not be perfect the first round, but you just have to start somewhere.
Yeah. And so again, I feel like, the best system that you can write is going to be yourself, but you can't do that. Sometimes you just can't barrel down. So there's systems for writing the system. Again, you can get a copy of my book on standardizing standard operating systems. In fact, if you send me an email, I'll send you a free copy. It's not about selling books, folks. It's about sharing that information. But if you'll just email me at the address on the screen, I'll be more than happy to send you a free copy of that ebook for your use. Okay. Or you can step up and you can buy Al Levy systems. But once you buy Al's, you got to go to work these things through. And to be honest with you, I know some people that have bought these and they're sitting in their computers. I hate to say this, they're stinking. Okay. Because they haven't done anything with them. So if you've got Al systems, then when are you going to start? You're not going to be great to start, but you got to start if you're going to be great. And I've seen people put this stuff together. Or the third thing we can do, which we're doing with one client next week, we'll send somebody into the office to write the systems for you, to write them for you. Because again, you're hearing what we're talking about here. So it's lack of training. It is lack of systems. It is lack of a right hiring process. It's lack of a onboarding process. It's lack of tracking and measuring. So what you need to do right now is start putting your plan together. Where in the first quarter of 2023, what are you going to do? Because here's got to be your goal. If you have gone through chaos this year, if you have gone through confusion, then you need to make it your goal that you are not going to repeat this again next year. How many times will you hit your toe with the hammer before you figure out that it hurts? It hurts. So, Sheryl, what would you add to my thoughts of getting together for 2023? What do they need to do?
Basically, just as you said, start. Make a plan, sit down, mind map it out if you have to. Really doesn't matter what drives you in the right direction, but get in that direction and move forward. Again, you have 6 weeks to set yourself up.
Right. Brandi, what about you?
Well, I think we can talk about it all day long, but going back to what Sheryl said, you have to actually sit down and do it. And so I know Sheryl and I are both big fans of like hour by hour planners. So I pulled up January here. So you need to go now and mark on your January calendar and actually block out that time. Block it out like it's a doctor's appointment, like your life depends on it, like you're not going to fill anything in that time, and sit down and make it happen.
That's it. That's what you got to do. It's like a client called me today. I need you to come spend a day here. We need to schedule a swap meeting. I sent out in the video earlier this week, and I said, great. Pick your days right now for 2023. If it falls on top of something that I can't do it, I'll let you know immediately. But let me know your days, and we will get this set up and make it happen. And that's what you got to do. You got to pull this trigger. You got to make it, because, folks, life is too short for this chaos and confusion and the pain that we so often go through. And we want to help you get out of this. But this is how you're going to do it. But you got to do this. It's part of your role. Nobody's going to do this for you. Brandi, that's the thing about you. You can't do it for them. Am I correct?
Yeah. I mean, we can lead them, and we can give them examples, but at the end of the day, they have to do the work.
Correct. Sheryl, you can hire a great candidate, but you can't control that onboarding. You can't control that training once you've made that recommendation. Am I correct?
I can get them through the door, and then I'm pretty much at the end of it unless they want to go into an onboarding.
Got you covered. Okay, so basically, I think we've covered today's subject very, very well. So, Cheryl, is there anything you would add before we bid adios for this week?
The main thing I'd say is look forward, never look backward. The rear view is not any good. We've all made mistakes. We've all procrastinated, but the future's ahead of you. If you want to see 23 look good, you need to also start looking towards 24.
There you go. So, Brandi, what about you? What would be your parting words before we say adios today?
Just start somewhere.
Just start somewhere. And folks, like I said, I can tell you that, and you look at all three of us up here, hey, we're here to help you. You can reach out to any of the three of us, and I know all of us will be glad to have a phone call. We can listen to your pain. We can give you a suggestion. This is what a lot of people do. One of the things we do is we provide on-site analysis where we actually come in and spend 2 days at the business. We look at all the weaknesses, and from that, put together what we see as the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats, and compose a business plan for them to follow with a strategic plan broke up in the ingredients. Because a lot of people, they just don't know how to start, Brandi. You ever seen anybody that just didn't know how to start?
Every day.
Single day. Okay. So with that, we appreciate you joining us this week on the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. Appreciate you being here every single week. If you're listening to on the replay, that's great. We have our entire library of past episodes are on our website at CVC Success Group. You can pull up every single episode and go back. And Sheryl, if somebody went through our library, who's some of the people that we have interviewed that would make their day to listen to? Who comes to the top of your list?
We've done Tommy Mello. We've done Larry Wingate. I could go on and on. The thing is, it's people just need to check it out and see what's out there. And also, we're open. If someone has someone great that would be a good interview, get in touch with us because we'd like to add them to the library.
That's exactly right. That's what we're looking for, great people. And we're not looking for people that want to promote themselves. Rather, we're looking for people that want to share their processes, their procedure. So, Brandi, looking back at our past history of the people we've interviewed, who runs at the top of your list of value that you've learned a lot from being on here?
You know my favorite one. I can never remember his name, the actor.
That was Glenn Morshower.
Yes, Glenn Morshower. I can never remember his name, but I can picture him, and I can still picture that whole thing. But I guess he wasn't on the podcast, was he? Was he with our private clients?
Yeah, he was in a group coaching meeting one night.
So we need to have him on the podcast. We need to see if he'll come on.
Okay, well, maybe I can arrange it. Maybe I need to send one out to Glenn, see if we can get him on here one day, because he definitely thinks. But we have had some great people. We've had Scott McCain on. We have Randy Pennington on, Tommy Mello. We've had Tom Ziegler on, the son of Zig Ziglar, Larry Wingate. The list goes on of the people we've interviewed. So we appreciate you being here with us today, and we'll look forward to joining us next week on the next episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. But my parting words to you, if you want to stop the chaos, if you're fed up with it, you got to start. Nobody else can make it happen but you. See you next